two very quick episodes. And so I think that I always encourage my students here to go to the archive, right? And so with my undergrads, we have a brilliant sort of archive here on campus, the Wilson Library, Southern Historical Collection. It's fantastic, one of the best places in the country to study the U.S. South. And so I take my undergraduates over there, and the staff are great in sort of getting their hands on materials. And like you gotta, if you're doing history, you gotta get to the archives, you gotta dig into sources. And so, two quick things. So, one is there's a great story that actually came from a newspaper, from a digital archive, one of the newspaper collections, of this. There's slave traders who are moving from North Carolina back to Georgia. They came up to purchase a bunch of enslaved people and drag them back to Georgia. And during this, while they're bringing their coffle through North Carolina, there is a group of men come out, of black men come out, guns blazing. They're snapping their weapons, and they take one of the men from the coffle, and they sort of flee. There's this moment of them sort of coming out of the forest, right, with firearms and essentially intimidating these enslavers, and sort of taking one of the men from he's related to one of the guys in this gang, and they're involved in a bunch of other crimes. But that kind of like rescue moment, it's brazen, and it's one of those things that when I saw it, I almost fell out of my chair. Like, this is incredible. The other thing I would point to is that in the archives, going through materials, there's a lot of really great materials in coroner's reports, and I really owe a debt to Sally Haddon, who kind of turned me onto these, because I made a lot of assumptions about what coroner's reports included, and I assumed it was sort of just like a person was killed, they were shot in the left part of their chest, it was a buckshot, and so you move on, right? They've been dead for 6 hours, this is the date. But they really are, because of these coroner's juries that are convened, they really are, for some of them, in-depth conversations with witnesses, and they interview folks, and they really kind of construct what's happened. And so, particularly working on firearms, a lot of times the only time that we get a lot of information about enslaved folks using firearms, or sometimes even free people of color, it's when they end up in the court system, right? It's when something has gone wrong. And occasionally you get some narratives where people are talking about their fathers using firearms, things like this. But for a lot of it, it's when people end up in the court system. And with the coroner's reports, there's one particularly, there's this actually free man of color, or free teenager of color, named Rigdon Lewis. He's a young man. He's apprenticed to a white farmer who also has enslaved black folks and some free white laborers as well, working on his farm as well. And so Lewis is kind of horse playing with a gun along with another worker there. It goes off and it kills him, right? And it's tragic, but you get the narrative of a bunch of different people who were there, right? I was in the kitchen, they were horse playing. The gun was there because one of the enslaved men was out shooting crows. He brought it back. He set it over there. And so you also get this look into like where the gun is on the plantation. It's not locked up in the white landowner's house. The enslaved people have access to it. The white laborers, the free black laborers have access to it. And so there's this tragedy, but through all of these stories of like the people who are there and they're talking about what happened, you kind of also get a sense of like the community that's there. And then start digging around a little bit more outside the coroner's reports, trying to figure out who Lewis is, because it's it's the coroner's reports. It's like he's not listed as a person of color, but then he kind of is in other places. And so digging around a little bit, I found his apprentice records. And he also has 3 siblings who are also apprenticed to this person. And so the tragedy then like magnifies. It's not just that he was sort of killed in his place, but his siblings were not in the room when it happened, but probably within earshot, right, of hearing the gunshot, and then sort of trying to figure out what happens, what had happened. It's quite tragic, but it's those kinds of like archival dives, right? And then when you can kind of like find, you put your tendrils out to the side to find other things that are related. I love that kind of work, and it's very heavy because a lot of it's to come up for air after some of the tragedy, right? Especially when writing about firearms, just the violence that's there, both accidental and intentional.